Today's podcast is brought to you by TETRA Hearing. TETRA Hearing isn't just hearing protection, it's hearing perfection.
Nope. A real game warden. Yeah.
A real game warden.
Field person?
Yes.
What are you doing right now? Just stripers?
I'm not even really doing that. I guess that's what's been going on. Mostly striper stuff.
Yeah. Well, turkey just ended. But.
Turkey, but that was pretty boring this year.
Yeah?
Yeah, nothing real exciting.
Had been a better season.
There's a lot of birds
harvest-wise.
out.
Yeah.
I didn't really check that many birds.
Oh, really?
No, I don't have a lot in my district. Most of that's over on the river.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of guys in our district now. So it's
So what is your district then?
Gridley. So it's like 162
yeah.
to Sutter and Butte Creek to the Feather.
So
It's
you had
expanded
the
up to
refuge hunts
Yeah.
on the refuge? Yeah, because I got stopped on the river on opening Sunday, and I thought I was going to see you, and it was two guys in a blue boat, and I was like, I've never seen these guys before.
Yeah, there's a lot between us and then the Sutter, Calusa, Yuba guys. We got a lot of people running around. So
Well, good. It's better than the
no,
opposite.
it's hard to go to work though. You go pick your area you want to go, and there's already been 2 or 3 game
I had that
wardens
problem.
running through it.
I had that problem in the Delta as well. It's annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, I guess
But
I
yeah,
can
it
find
ebbs and
someplace
flows,
that-
right? Sometimes there's almost too many, and then sometimes there's not enough.
Yeah.
You're getting 2 a.m.
Oh,
calls.
plenty of days
yeah.
where people are on vacation or sick or whatever, and you happen to be the only person around for the weekend. You're like,
Yeah.
Okay.
From this side of the valley over to the other side
Yeah.
and back again.
Yeah, that's
pretty
interesting
much.
because I've always heard it's just like, we're the only ones out here for 9 million miles. Now it's like,
It's
there's-
improved.
Yeah, over the past however many years.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the mountain. I would say the mountain areas, Eastern Sierra areas, the coverage, the size of districts, and the density is less in terms of wardens coverage. Then they get some drives.
Well, and in the valley, 60 miles is not that far. You go 60 miles in the mountains. I mean, that takes you half a day to get
Right.
someplace,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, there's guys that live just over ridges from each other and see each other once a month, maybe, depending on where they're working.
You're
So-
running into other people out there.
Oh, I'm running into people all the time.
Well, it's crazy you mentioned striper season. Last year, I ran into a game warden that he grew up next to me, and we're down at Teasdale. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" Randomly at the launch, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, Jeff's getting a ticket or whatever." When I was talking to him, I was like, "What have you guys checked?" He's like, "Oh, a lot of short stripers." He's like, "Well, actually, last night, just right here, we got guys poaching deer in the orchards." I was like. It's April, and he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't imagine what goes on at night." I was like, "No way." He's like, "Oh yeah," he goes, "Literally right here." I was like, "Geez,
Those random things.
yeah." You don't think that as a normal person that abides by the law, like
That's even an option.
yeah, like that's even like people do that.
Like
right?
that happens during deer season, and deer season only. It's like,
Yeah, not the case, but.
Yeah.
So welcome back to Save for the Blind podcast. We have 2 wildlife officers, Lieutenant Sean Kenady and Tyson Hulse, joining us today. We're going to talk about the roles of a game warden, things people could do out in the field to better understand laws, and try to inform everyone on what the game warden's or wildlife officer's job is, what they're doing out there, and potentially career options for folks that want to get in the field that are passionate about wildlife. So thank you guys so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. We've been looking forward to this for a while. We've been talking about it as an episode, so we appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
of course.
So can you guys kind of tell us the background requirements of like getting into it, your personal backgrounds, and really why you chose this as a field? Because I think at one time in my career, I thought about it. I know Carson was almost recruited to be a game warden.
Loggy was on me hard for a while.
Hey, it's never too late. Just
It is. Trust me.
I told Loggy he's off limits. He's off limits. But I think it's got to be a passion. Obviously, it's a different job, but it takes a certain individual to really do that.
Yeah, and I'll start with the background education requirements, and then go into my background, and then you can add your background in and see where it goes from there. But so the education requirement, essentially, it's a high school degree or the equivalent. There's a couple of ways you can get the equivalent of that. But and then for the college side, we do have a college unit requirement with one caveat I'll say is 60 semester hours of college to enter the academy, with 18 of those units being from a long list of related fields. And when I say long list, it's quite a broad list. It's almost easier to find stuff that is deemed a related field than to find something that is not related. So 60 units required to enter the academy, but you can apply when you have 30 units in. So the way I think of it is if you're going to like a JC or CC to get an associate's degree, you can apply after your first year if you're going full time.
Okay.
Because the background process, hiring process takes, I'd say, a minimum 7 months with all the steps involved, up to a year depending on when you apply. So that's the education side. There is no degree required. I hear that one all the time. I'll have someone email us and say, I know a degree is required, and I'll have to stop you right there. It's just the unit requirement. It's not a degree requirement. If you have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, you do get a education differential. It's 2.5% for a associate's degree, like a bump each month, 2.5%, and then 5% for a bachelor's. So while there is a benefit to having a degree, there is not a requirement to have one. And then the general background requirements, you don't have to have well, first of all, I'll say that it's not a requirement. This is another one we get. It's not a requirement that you have to be an angler or a hunter, a consumptive user. It's not really a requirement that you even be outdoorsy, but I'd say it's certainly something we'd look into. And if you just have no outdoor inclination at all, it might not be the best fit.
Are there a lot of those folks that are applying that don't have any, outdoors background?
No, I don't think so. I think we've seen an increase in the ones that aren't hunters or anglers, but I don't feel like there's a huge number. I think we get one every once in a while, but I wouldn't say there's a huge number of folks that are applying just from completely out of the blue.
Right.
Most of them are at least backpackers or have an outdoor interest, either be education or just family background. But I think most of them, we get some that are ranchers, so they may not be, a hunter or an angler, but they have a cattle outfit, or they, we get guides from time to time. So most of them, I think, have some sort of outdoor interest, and I think that's a good idea. And then, so that's kind of your personal background. And then if we get to the background, meaning like, say criminal or that sort of thing, you don't have to be perfect. I was on the phone with someone at an event it was in person, at an event on Saturday in San Jose, and he was all worried about a driving ticket he got last year. It doesn't matter, man.
We all have
them, yeah. In fact, the ones that say I've never had a driving ticket, we're looking at you have to have a relatively clean background, right? If you have a pattern of bad decision making or integrity issues, that is not a dimension. You're not reachable with those, kind of post-hiring dimensions on there. If you have just even a single felony conviction or a domestic violence misdemeanor conviction, those are offenses that preclude you from possessing a firearm. We can't hire you. There are other roles in the department that may be a fit, but being a game warden is not one of them. So you have to be relatively clean, but not perfect. And then I think last I'll say on this one before I go into my background is you have to be honest about it. So part of the peace officer hiring role is you have to fill out a personal history statement. And what we see, an unfortunate percentage of the time, is folks will lie about things that are relatively minor. And it's not the act that gets them DQ'd or not hired. It's the fact they lied about it or intentionally omitted it. And so that speaks to their honesty. And if someone proves to us they're dishonest, there's not much we can do. We can't hire them that year. Yeah. So that's kind of the background requirements.
What percentage of new cadets coming in do you see that have an undergrad degree versus not having an undergrad degree?
I'm gonna have to ballpark that one, but I would say, I would say most of them end up with at least an associate's.
Okay.
In terms of a 4-year degree, I would say in the neighborhood of 50 to 60%.
Interesting.
But I think that varies somewhat year to year too. And so we're not all the way through this year's.
Yeah.
And last year's batch was my first year, so that might be kind of a gross number there.
So you could
but
have
it's a
really
pretty
young
number.
cadets then, because they could come out of high school, get their credits, and be what, 19 by the time they apply?
They have to be 21 by the time the academy ends. So they can actually enter the academy at like 20 and a half, which means they could apply at like 19 and a half.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
how long is the academy?
It's about 7.5 months long.
Okay.
Which is 6 months for the post regular basic course, more commonly known as the police academy. We have to meet all those requirements. But then we have about a month and a half of fish and game stuff spliced in there, because we can't turn you loose on field training with no fish and game background, right?
Yeah.
My background was I went to Davis and UC Davis and got a wildlife fish and conservation biology bachelor's degree. So I could have gone the more biological route, conservation route, or I could have gone to law enforcement. And I started out more on the habitat restoration side of things.
Okay.
And applied to this job the first time, didn't get accepted. I was very young, didn't have much life experience. The second time I applied, I got in and was successful in the academy and field training. And that was 16 plus years ago. So I've been there. I've drone on long enough. What about your background?
No, I mean, I started out like a lot of us hunting and fishing since I was just a little kid with the family. Ended up going to school for a wildlife biology degree. I made it about one semester away from graduating. And at the time I worked for the department already at what used to be called the Wildlife Investigations Lab. Now it's the Wildlife Health Lab, I believe. And when I was working there, I got to see every aspect of the department, the wildlife side, the fishery side, the HabCon side. And they had a captain and a few wardens that worked out of the office in Rancho Cordova. So it was a real benefit to me to see which route I wanted to take. And I just sort of gravitated to the enforcement side, the way those officers acted, what they did in the field, their dedication to protecting the resource. Because you had the wildlife and fishery side creating the regulations, doing the research, and then you have the wildlife officer side that are enforcing those, right? And it's kind of what's the point of having a regulation if you don't have a way to enforce that regulation? Yeah. Does no good. So I kind of gravitated towards that, and I was picked up for the academy in 2010, and I said, well, I could finish my semester or I could start a career, and I chose to start the career. That was I graduated August of 2010, and I started in the Gridley District in Butte County, and that's where I've been for 13 and a half years.
Yeah.
One thing like that is anybody that's interested in working for the department just in general, maybe not even necessarily law enforcement, is look for those scientific aid jobs, those seasonal aid jobs, at refuges or at headquarters or hatcheries. Because like for me, that kind of gave me an idea of the department as a whole and how it works. And that's how I ended up here. I was going to wildlife, said, maybe that's not quite what I want to do. So I jumped ship over to the enforcement side.
And at least one of your squad mates did the same thing, right? Started at a wildlife area down south, and
I think a lot of them did.
Yeah.
Most obviously there's not that many scientific aid jobs in the state, but a lot of us that's kind of how we start is
get your foot in the door,
being involved in that way. Talking to, I was one door away from a captain at the time when I worked down there, so I got to see all the ins and outs and go on ride-alongs and help them immobilize animals and respond to calls. So it gave me a really good sense of, the enforcement side and what they do. So, and I'm glad I chose this route.
Yeah. And can you guys speak to the fact that there's two ways to go to the academy, right? There's a way to get sponsored, quote unquote, and then you could put yourself through. And what are those two options if someone wanted to become a game warden? Yeah,
there's a couple. There's might even be a couple in between there, so we'll try to walk my way through them. But the two that you've mentioned are basically sponsored or affiliated, and self-sponsored or unaffiliated. If you apply to work for us as a cadet, you're applying for a sponsored cadet position, meaning that you will get a salary while you're there. Now, mind you, it's at the cadet rate, so it's not super, but it does increase after 7.5 months of the academy.
Okay.
You do not pay tuition at the academy because it's our academy and we're paying your way through. And you also get lodging and food, I'll say subsidized. It might not cover the whole thing. You might have to roommate with someone, but it does help with the food and lodging. Financially, that's the easiest road, okay? If you were to go self-sponsored, you are paying a tuition just to be there. You are not earning a salary from us. The academy is full-time, so it's unlikely you can work much on the side. Mm-hmm. And you don't get any lodging or food subsidy or per diem. So financially, it's much easier to go the sponsor route. But that doesn't work out for everyone. Some people don't have enough units, and they want to do the academy and can get those units that way.
Okay.
That's one that's happened recently. Some folks have a history that was good enough to let in the academy, but not quite good enough to hire right off the bat.
Yeah. So what's the sponsored What's the vetting process for that? Can just,
So it's just a hiring process. So you apply, we screen it initially, which is what we do a lot of in our unit, especially this time of year. If the pre-screening goes okay, you'll be invited to fill out a personal history statement, which is it's a hiring document. I think they've standardized it now for all California law enforcement agencies. And it talks about my education, my background, my references, where I've lived. It's pretty comprehensive. We'll take a look at that and we'll screen it again. And if it still looks good, then you're admitted to the background process and you're assigned a background investigator. And that background investigation takes ideally 2 months. Is usually what we try to allot background investigators. Sometimes we deal with a more compressed timeline, but ideally 2 months. If that looks good, then towards the end of the process, we have some steps. We do our physical ability test at the end of the process, whereas a lot of agencies do it right off the bat. And that has certain specifications. It's not that difficult, but we do see a few people fail out every year. Last year it was the 1.5 mile run, got a few people. One person had trouble with the swim part of it. And then some people just scored the bare minimum for all the steps, and that wasn't enough to get them over the threshold.
Gotcha.
If they pass that, and on the day of the PAT, we're usually giving them a conditional offer of employment. Because I'd say the last 2 steps in the process, the medical and the psych, need to be done after you've given them a conditional offer of employment. Those aren't to be taken into consideration where we're deciding if the person is capable. That stuff is kind of evaluated independently by the professionals. So that's a real brief version of the hiring process to get into that sponsored cadet role. Whether you're sponsored or self-sponsored, it's the same academy, 7.5 months long. And I had mentioned some other intermediate steps. There is a way. I'm doing a background on someone right now that he's self-sponsoring himself through a modular academy, which the academies, they can be intensive where they're essentially full-time, or they can be modular where they're broken up into 3 segments, which is good for this individual and others in his similar life. He's a full-time job, but he's able to go 3 nights a week and then an all-day Saturday. Mm-hmm. And he's able to satisfy the requirement for the academy. If he successfully completes that academy, he can then apply to us not as a cadet, but as a lateral. Because we do take lateral officers that have either completed an academy within the last year and have a basic academy certificate, or are currently in an academy conditional upon proof of completion, or, and this is probably the one we get most of our laterals from, is if they're a lateral at another agency, and they have an interest in fish and game. It's something they've always wanted to do. And then it seems about 5 to 7 years in their other agencies. They call it the 7-year itch, and at least in this context. But they'll start applying about that time frame, and they can apply to us. So while they have their other job at their other agency, they can apply to us, and that's the more conventional way to become a lateral officer. That's just slide over that way. And that way is nice because you already have a job. You're secure in that role. If it works out with us, great. If it doesn't, you still have your other jobs. So those are kind of the ways, the different ways you can get into us, be it self-sponsored, sponsored, or lateral. Anything to add on that?
No, I think only thing on the lateral thing, because I had a Glenn County sheriff ask me about it the other day, and he was wondering about specifically 2 laterals, if there's people that are considering it. Because when you go through our academy, you can get positioned pretty much anywhere in the state at this point. There's no real guarantee you're going to get to go back to where you're from. Is that the same for laterals? Do they try to position them at least near where they're already established?
That's a common question, and to be honest, it's kind of a hurdle for us. But being a state agency, where there's a vacancy, can be anywhere statewide. You can be assigned there. The way we address that is we'll have a list of vacancies, and the laterals they can put their preference in, right? So there's 30 spots. They can order them from 1 to 30, 1 being their preferred spot, 30 being, oh Lord, please no. We try to get them slotted as high up as we can. And we take into consideration things like who owns a house in a certain area, who has a family with roots in an area. And then there's the 21-year-old over here with no property, no family. I would say he's more likely to get sent possibly further down on his list. The benefit the laterals get is they get flown that list first before the cadets go through. So they are going to have a lower badge number, so they'll have seniority, and they'll get a pick of that first. And so that's kind of how that works. Is they tell us what they'd prefer, and we do the best we can to make it work. It doesn't always work out. We had a lateral last year make it through almost the entire process, and the position he wanted was, I'd say, reasonable and close to where he was looking, but it wasn't good enough, and he decided to pass and stay with his current agency.
Wow.
That's fun. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
But it is kind of a difficult one for us because if you work for a municipal PD, you know you're going to be assigned somewhere in that city, some beat in that city.
Yeah.
With the state employment, it technically could be anywhere from the southern deserts up to the Oregon border or the Nevada border on the east. So, or it could be in the San Francisco Bay Area on the west. So, it was interesting. You said you got Gridley right out of the academy.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago, that would have never happened. It would have been L.A., the deserts, or San Francisco. Yeah.
When I started, and I was telling some of the older guys, like, oh yeah, I got Gridley. Yeah, they were like, their brains almost exploded. Like, you used to have to work years down in Southern California or on the coast, and then gradually work your way back to Northern California. And in the last at least few years, it doesn't seem to be that way. It might be now because those northern positions are filled with guys that only have a handful of years on.
Yeah.
So it might go back to that. But yeah, for quite a few years, I mean, you had people with 1, 2, 3 years on coming back to the North State.
And is that mostly because the guys were retiring that had held those positions for so long, or is that just because you didn't have as many game wardens at that time?
I think it's due partially. There's always going to be turnover. We're at about 375 field level officers right now, and there's always going to be turnover. Either people retiring or people promoting. We do have a few go to other agencies, but that's not usually a significant number. I think it's due to that 375 number I mentioned, which is an approximation. It's a lot more than we used to have because we've had our cannabis enforcement program has more spots now. OSPR, so oil spill prevention response, has more roles now, as does wildlife trafficking. So when you have that many more spots, almost double, instead of having 1 or 2 spots near any given city, you might have 3 or 4. And so some people are taking a spot that might not interest them as much in terms of assignment or activity, but it's where they want to be. It's closer to family or closer to their aging parents. And so it's a lot easier for folks to get back to where they want to be now than it used to be. And part of that, I think, is due to the number of spots we have.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's interesting to talk about. Kind of our next question, it rolls right into it. To me, back in the day, a game warden was a game warden. They enforced wildlife laws, and you're still doing that. But like you said, there's so many more things that occur now for a warden to be able to do, whether it's OSPR, whether it's, the marijuana, whatever you're doing. What, if you were to define the role of a game warden, what is it?
Well, I think like you said years ago, the game warden was the guy that dealt with hunting and fishing. That's what you did. The occasional habitat issue. But as the state has expanded, the role has expanded to the point where now we have new divisions of cannabis, OSPR, wildlife trafficking.
And those are all still game wardens.
Those are all still wildlife officers, game wardens. Yep. The cannabis thing, you could be assigned to that right out of the academy. So you're not doing necessarily traditional game warden work. You're not really assigned a district to enforce hunting and fishing and environmental laws and respond to calls. You're designated to respond and investigate cannabis-related stuff, whether it's permitted, unpermitted. For me, I'm still the field level game warden. I have a district, so I'm responsible for, the state and federal lands, private lands, the rivers, and responding to calls and investigating crimes that happen there. So it with our name change, Fish and Game, now we're Fish and Wildlife, but it really should be Fish, Wildlife, and Environment. Because we do deal a lot.
That's way too long. I can't say that.
We deal a lot with environmental calls, whether it's pollution
But he's right.
or
Yeah.
stream bed alteration stuff. Depending on what part of the state you live in or work in, the stream bed alteration thing is pretty heavy. There's a lot of that work going on. So you're pretty much covering everything. I'm in my district. I'm still real heavy into the hunting and fishing type stuff. I have a lot of ag in my district, so I do get the occasional pollution, fertilizer truck dumped over, or this happened. But, it varies throughout the state. It really depends on where your district is or what
Division you're
assigned to within the game or the law enforcement. What you're doing.
And once your initial assignment out of the academy is not a life sentence, right?
Yeah.
If you're in, you're great. You got it. You got a spot. Congratulations. You might be there. I think on paper it says 3 years, but in practicality, sometimes it's as little as 1 year before you can start to apply for lateral transfers to a different spot that's more to your liking, whether that's a different role or different location. That ability to lateral transfer is based off of seniority. If you're going from one warden spot to another warden spot, it's not a promotion. It's just a lateral transfer. It's a relatively simple process. But if there's multiple people that put in for that same spot, it's the lowest badge number gets that most often. There are probably some variances or grievances, but most often it's a low badge number gets it. And so even if you don't like your first role, as long as you get in, you basically are improving your lot from there through voluntary transfers. I can't recall if I've ever heard of anyone involuntary transferred. Can you?
I don't think
there's been some reorganization stuff that's happened, but they didn't. They're not talking on the Tahoe warden, giving them a call and saying, "Hey, we're going to move you to Blythe for department needs." Yeah. I've been on almost 17 years. I've never heard of that happening.
I don't think that happens.
No.
Not that I'm aware of. But along with the role, the role of the wildlife officer, everybody thinks it's resource protection, but we are peace officers. Mm-hmm. So there is the public servant aspect where you are protecting the public, right? As a law enforcement officer, as your number one duty is public safety. Again, depending on where you work, you might not run into that aspect as much, but it's still something to consider. We're not strictly fish game environment. If I'm driving by someone in trouble, I'm not waving and calling, the sheriff, be like, "Hey, this guy needs your help over here." No, I'm still doing my law enforcement job and assisting where I need to. So I think some people kind of don't realize that at times. Just another aspect of the job that you have to deal with occasionally.
Yeah.
And when you're as a field warden, how are you planning out your days? Like, is it, it's almost deer season, I'm going to start going out at night to catch night poachers, or it's duck season. How do you look at your week in terms of?
You better answer this one. My answer's kind of sad.
Come to the office. Read
It's Monday morning. Open emails.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. And like Sean said earlier, the hunting and fishing requirement, or not a requirement, but the hunting and fishing thing is not a requirement for the job, but it does help because you're already in that world. So, just like you said, it's based upon time of year, what's in season. Weather is a big thing, which seems to be less and less predictable than it used to be, especially for waterfowl. I constantly check my weather app, but it hasn't been super accurate in the last couple of years. So it says it's supposed to be windy in the morning. I wake up and it's 70 degrees and sunny, and it's like, oh well, this is gonna be a great waterfowl day. So it's just it's all dependent on the season. Activity in your area, getting to know your district really well, the areas that people are going to be, developing contacts in your area, so landowners, other hunters that can say, "Hey, I think this is going on at night." Mm-hmm. Well, now I know. Okay, I'm going to direct my next few patrols at night in this area and see what is going on. Right?
Yeah, it's not uncommon to get a call for service of. Someone will call and say, "I don't know what happened, but I was get up at night, 2 a.m. getting a drink of water, and I heard 3 shots to my east." And then maybe someone that lives over in that area, and they say, "No, but my dog started barking about that time." So calls for service sometimes direct your enforcement activities.
And calls for service help a lot because the poacher is not scheduled, so he's not going to be out there doing what he wants to do when you're working. It can be totally random. You could work for a week straight and get nothing, and the one night you don't go out, something happens. So it's a game that you have to know your area, know your seasons, know who lives there, know the activity to then develop your patrol plan.
Are a lot of like the big cases, are they off of those leads? I mean, it's probably not like super frequent where you're like just pull over a random guy and you're like, wow, you got 150 ducks in your back. You probably know that person or have been watching them or building a case, right?
Yeah, I feel like some of the every once in a while you stumble into something good on your own through your own enforcement activities. But I feel like a lot of my better cases were from tips. Information you really wouldn't have had access to had someone else not made a call or had someone else not saw something, said something. So I feel like a lot of the better cases I've done, and then a lot of the ones I hear people making come from tips. But that's not to say that you can develop your own great poaching case from your own work.
Yeah, absolutely. Just through talking to people.
Yeah.
And how can people reach you guys?
So on the back of your hunting or fishing license is the information for the cow tip number. It's super common for people to go, I'll be contacting them and they'll say, I saw this last week. And I'll say, well, did you call cow tip? No, I don't know the number. And so I'll grab their fishing license and turn it on the back and it's right there.
Perfect.
So yeah, use the number on there. I think there's a text capability to do it.
I think it's tip 411.
Sounds right.
I think it's an app actually.
Oh,
I've never had to use it myself, but I believe it's an app. It's called Tip 411. Has all the questions, same questions you'd ask if you call cow tip. That goes to a coordinator, and then that coordinator sends it out to the district area officer.
And I want to add something else to that. So it was also common to have people say, oh, I called cow tip. And I'll say, great. And they say, I got a voicemail and left a message. And they would take that as a disincentive to do it next time.
Yeah, I've heard
My
that.
message was, I get it, but if you still provide that information, even if it's cold, it's still helpful. If you have a plate, that's helpful. But just knowing that activity is going on in that area is still a benefit to us, even if we don't catch that particular instance, because we just know to target it next time and go out there next time. So if you are not able to get a hold of a warden that day and it ends up being no action taken that day, it's not a total wash. There's still benefit to calling in what you have.
Yeah, the warden's getting the information,
Right.
so that's always a plus, right? Because we've heard that from folks like, oh, left a voicemail. It's like, yeah, but it's getting to the game warden that needs it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of cases being made off of cow tips that were 2 months old.
Right, because
the
you
neighbor gets frustrated and says, 2 months ago he shot a deer or whatever. Case still gets made. They go over there and there's the horns laying there, antlers, and where's your tag? Oh, I don't have it. It turns into a big case. So even if it's 2 months old, a case can still be generated and a person can be caught violating that.
And to those folks that don't call in, we teach our hunter ed students, like, they're stealing from everybody. Poachers are stealing from everybody, taking wildlife out of season. So it's your duty as a conservationist to let game wardens know what's going on, because that a lot of the times that person probably has been doing that activity for a while, right?
You most likely didn't witness his first act, right?
Yeah, you weren't out there the first time they did it.
Yeah.
So this year when I was turkey hunting, opening Sunday, I was turkey hunting on the river. I got stopped by two state game wardens. And then the very next day, I got stopped at the boat ramp by a federal warden in the same exact area. What is the difference between you guys and the federal wardens as far as jurisdiction or legality and what you guys can use your powers? Because I personally have no clue. I know I'm, law abiding, so I just provide what they ask for, but I have no clue if there's any difference at all or if there's actually some difference.
So the state and federal officer, the idea is still the same. You're still resource protection. And to the best of my understanding, the federal officers generally are on federal properties. So Sac Refuge, Delavan, Calusa, and then like all the river units. That's their priority, right? So their same idea with us being in my district where I get the calls and I patrol. That's what they do, but on Fed land. As far as what they can do off of Fed land, if I remember correctly, it's up to the sheriff of the county.
Okay.
To allow them to enforce laws off of the state land. Now, when it comes to like migratory birds, they can do that. They can stop and check duck hunters. But when it comes to enforcing any other activity, they generally have to have permission to do that. I'm not going to say how they get that permission because I don't know exactly. But the idea is still the same. It's just a matter of the areas that they stick around at.
Yeah, so that federal officer or warden probably wasn't interested in the turkey so much, being a non-migratory species, but probably your usage of those river units, being in that proximity, is probably what he was out there targeting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would say, because they enforce them, no licenses and all the same regulations. I work pretty close with them up where I am because of all the duck hunting that we have up there, migratory bird. So they're a really good resource for migratory waterfowl that fall under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. That's their thing, and they like doing that. So it's again, same idea, resource protection, just different, obviously government and a little bit more rules as far as where they can go.
Okay.
And coverage is often heavier on openers and closers, and so you just experience that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah,
interesting.
no, and
I like to see it though. Like as a hunter, I like to see when I'm seeing game wardens or whatnot. 'Cause I know they're out there doing their job and keeping the people from.
Yeah, I have nothing to worry about. I check my license, checks the guns for plugs, and he's like, go on your way.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something that needs to happen like every time you go out, but it is nice to have it happen sort of on an infrequent basis, where there's some coverage. It's just the presence alone discourages some of that activity. Some of it, not all of it. But I don't know that it needs to be. I don't think every hunter every day should be checked, but I think to have it kind of random on a consistent but not necessarily frequent basis, I like that low level of constant attention.
Yeah, and that's where the district warden idea comes in. Is that if I check one of my regulars at the beginning of the season, he's got his license, his tags, his plugs, everything's fine. I don't really need to check him for that basic stuff. The rest I might ask to see his backpack or whatever, to check his take, but I'm not going to ask for his fishing and hunting license every
single
time.
day, 10 times.
He's going to get really upset with me if I keep doing that kind of thing. The one thing I will say about the Fed officers, they can be shipped all over the place. So the guys that work locally on the Sac River, they've had to make runs over to Fallon, Klamath, over to Idaho because they don't have enough officers to cover those areas. So he'll take a week-long trip to go out to the Ruby Marsh and spend a week out there patrolling, doing whatever. He'll come back, be here for a month, and then have to go up to Oregon to go to one of the properties or refuges.
Yeah.
So they get to travel a lot. I don't know if I could do that, but that is one aspect if someone's considering the federal job is you might have to travel quite a bit.
Which may or may not be attractive,
young person with
if you're that 21-year-old that doesn't have roots down, send me wherever.
Travel around the country. So.
So being a waterfowl organization, what are some of the more common waterfowl infractions, and how could a hunter be more informed about some of those laws and not break those laws and just kind of know everything that's going on?
I think you should start with this one, and I'll chime in if needed.
I mean, for me, because I have a lot of refuges, so I have Gray Lodge, Little Dry Creek, Howard Sloughs, kind of right on my border, Llano Seco, Orville Wildlife Area. So I have a lot of waterfowl hunting activity on state land, and then being an ag district, I'm probably 90% rice fields. So probably the number one violation that I see, I guess towards the beginning of the season, is more pintail over limits, especially with new hunters.
What do they think they are? Because we see that a lot. Not a lot, but I mean, we do. The pintail is the most
especially when they're not all plumed out at the beginning of the season. They always come in with their one bull. Mm-hmm. I got my sprig, and then they spread out the rest of their ducks. Like, that's a widgeon or a gadwall or, a young mallard.
Yeah.
And you pick it up and think, well, no, this is how you ID it. Unfortunately, this is a hen pintail. Mm-hmm. So towards the beginning, that's probably the number one that I see as far as, actual waterfowl violations go. Stamps. Fed and state stamp,
especially early in the year.
Early in the year, even towards the end of the season, people either forget to buy them, or new hunters are like, oh, I didn't know. I had a guy this year tell me he didn't need the state stamp because he was only shooting geese. He only needed the Fed stamp.
Because it's called a state duck foundation.
Exactly. I was like, well, that's not entirely true, unfortunately. But the state Fed stamp thing gets people.
Yeah, let's clarify one thing right now. And I know the answer to this, but I'm going to have you guys answer. Does the Fed stamp need to be attached to the back of the license? Because we have people that come in and say, oh, it needs to be attached. I said, no, it doesn't. So you guys.
It used to be. My dad, who's somewhat of a stamp collector, got into it with a couple of check station folks sometimes because they would want it adhered to the back, but it just said attached. So he had a stamp envelope. He would staple it, put it in the stamp envelope. A huge inconvenience to the check station attendant. My apologies to all of you out there. No longer needs to be attached, correct?
Correct.
It needs to be in immediate possession and it needs to be signed.
Correct.
But it does not need to be attached anymore. I do it because if I don't attach it, I'm going to lose it. But,
And why does it need to be signed? For all those folks out there.
it needs to be signed so people don't have a pot in their clubhouse with stamps in there to pass back and forth.
Transferring. Yeah. So
I would have preferred it said legibly signed.
yeah, I've seen some signatures that I wouldn't be able to tell.
But it doesn't. Yeah.
To go along with Sean, I affix mine because
I always have. Yeah.
that's one of the things that I run into is, let me see your license. Okay, you got your state validation, your hunting license. Where's your Fed stamp? Oh, it's not
I
on
was
there.
here last week, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not on there. Let me look at my wallet. Let me
Yep.
look at my duck bag. Let me look at my truck. I don't know where it is. And I have no ability to look any of that up. So even if you did purchase it, if it's sitting at home, it does you no good because I can't see it.
I don't see a lot of reason not to attach it.
Yeah.
So I do it all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
I know we'll probably touch on the new app that's out and going to be enforced a little bit later. But do we accept e-federal duck stamps in California?
Yes.
We do. I would say it's not. I don't know. How often do you see those?
I'm seeing them more and more.
Okay.
Is California, as far as I know, unless they changed it this year, I haven't looked at ALDS. We don't sell them,
Yep.
Yeah, you have to get
Correct.
through another
but
state.
you could do it through another
Yeah.
state. I bought mine through Nevada last year.
That's what I've been doing for about 5 years. Yeah.
and,
so much easier than
Thank
going
you,
to the
Nevada.
post
Yeah.
office or
and we
Big
do honor
Five
them.
or-
I think they send an email. Nevada will send you an email that says, "Hey, you purchased this." You'll save that email.
Temporary, yeah.
Temporary. So
Yeah.
if you get checked, hey, I just bought it. And then I think Nevada sent me a new hunting license with it on there.
That's great
And then
information.
they eventually sent me the actual stamp.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's a
Really good
process.
information.
And I don't know how other states do it. But yes, we do honor them. The check stations honor them now.
They know about them. It's not.
Yeah.
It won't be the first time
It's
they've
not
ever
new
seen it.
news
Right.
at this
Right.
point.
Yeah,
Right.
but don't delete your email when you buy it because,
Yeah.
again, you delete it, you're out of luck.
Yeah, and I would say folks need to actually check their licenses when they leave, Big Five, Walmart, et
Yes.
cetera. Because we've seen that where it's like, well, I told the person I
Yeah.
needed a California duck stamp, and we've seen where they sold them the previous year's Fed stamp, and they came for the morning of the hunt. And we're like, this is last year's Fed stamp.
I've warned for that one myself.
Yeah, we keep a bunch of the property just because we've seen them so much.
Smart.
We're like, here you go, here's the correct one. But
The other thing I see a lot is the hunting privilege only. When they go to somewhere, it's like a sportsman's warehouse.
Okay,
They print out the HPO,
Yeah.
and they don't have their hunting license. And I'm like, no, read the top of this. It says not valid unless in possession of with your hunting license.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'll get that a lot.
yeah,
I would say the checking your hunting license, because I see it, Sean's seen it. They hand you your stuff. They say, well, I told the clerk at Walmart I need everything for duck hunting. They didn't give me everything. I'm going to get Walmart. Well, no, you're the hunter.
Yeah.
You're the one going hunting. Make sure your stuff is in order. You
Yeah.
know, you don't need somebody holding your hand. Make sure everything is there because it falls back on you. I'm not going to go down to Walmart, find the clerk, and write them a ticket for not giving you what you need. It's up to you. It is your responsibility.
When you ask for certain validations or hunting license or whatnot, they're all printed as a line item. So you mentioned HPO, hunting privilege only. So if you just got a California duck validation, it would say HPO and a year, and then it would show a line item down about halfway down below your personal information, what you bought and what you paid for. And so that was one where you get, well, I paid for it. And I'd say, no, I'll show you right here in the license what you paid for. And it was these three, and here's the cost, and here's the total.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just read it. Take the time, take 2 minutes and read your hunting license or fishing license, and it'll show you what's on there. And if you're missing something, you got to go get it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
don't yell at check station staff when they don't let you go out because you don't have a stamp.
yeah.
They don't sell that stuff there. It's not their fault. You forgot it. So that's me
Yeah.
personally having multiple refuges.
Yeah.
Calls at 5 a.m. about a disgruntled person that
Oh, boy.
has to run into town to buy their stamp.
Yeah, we've seen that a bunch where like a guy has been hunting all season. He's like telling stories, and we're like, let's check your license. And we're like, you just have a hunting license. You got no stamp. Oh my goodness. Like,
Yeah.
come on, man.
Yeah.
But
I was taking a ride along one time. He was with a different agency in the Central Coast, and he was interested in applying to us. So I took him. I took him quail hunting, actually, not a ride along that time. Quail hunting. On the way to go quail hunting, I thought I was being a wise guy, and I said, "Hey, just so we're clear, let me check your hunting license real quick." Ha ha ha. It was last year's.
Oh,
so
man.
because we stopped and checked it first time, we were able to dive into a Walmart and get him an updated license. But that's how easy it is. Is someone who's not checking can miss the year, not pay attention to the year number, and make that mistake. Yeah.
I've seen it was either the very first year or the second year I worked for CWA. We used to run a dove hunt out by the casino in Lincoln, and at one of the game wardens, I can't remember who it was, so I don't have a name, nor would I name.
That might be good. Okay, yeah.
that person showed up. Like, oh, I'm a game warden. Blah blah. I was like, oh, yeah, see your license, and they had their license, but they didn't sign it and validate it. And so I'm like, well, could you sign your license, please? Like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Not a big party foul, but I was just like, sign your license.
Yeah, that one's on the lower end of scale. I've never cited for that, but it is something. If you haven't read it, you wouldn't have seen it says sign down here. So take a look at your stuff. That includes sturgeon cards and things like that. It's amazing how many, getting off of waterfowl just for a second, how many people gripe about sturgeon regulations and it's unclear. Well, the reason it's like 4 feet long is because all the instructions are there. Yeah. And you're sitting bait fishing for hours. Why don't you take a few minutes and read the thing?
Same thing with the steelhead report cards. Yeah. I get asked rules all the time. I say, well, read the bottom half. And it's almost every hatchery only, this, that. Yeah. It's almost all there. You just have to read it.
You have to read
Take a few minutes and read it.
It's hard for some people.
It is,
yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Save It for the Blind podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.